Ben, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you on the show. I have enjoyed listening to your podcast. I've loved to see you on stage. You've just got this amazing charisma, but you and I are so deeply aligned. And you know what they say, like when two people love the same thing, they're just so deeply connected. So I love what you love, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
Oh, I love it. I love all of that. You're amazing. I love your podcast. It was great seeing you in person in Dallas, and we're going to have so much fun today. Let's do this.
Let's do it. Okay. So, a stat that you and I are very, very familiar with is that only 7% of American adults are metabolically healthy. I don't know about you, but every time I read that stat, it is a gut punch. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how have we failed people? And I'd love for you if you would take a moment to break down what you think has led us to this point in history right now today. And can you also explain how we came up with this stat? Like, how is it that we're defining metabolically unhealthy people?
Yeah, that is an alarming stat. In other words, 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy, which is insane. And that was actually a 2022 study that they looked at certain metrics, blood sugar, blood pressure, BMI, although BMI is not the best metric, and certain lab markers. And they assessed, okay, how many people meet the criteria of healthy blood markers, healthy body weight versus those who don't. And the study showed that about 93% of the people they studied are metabolically unhealthy, what they consider having metabolic challenges. And that's alarming because we were not designed that way. God did not design the body to have all these symptoms and disease. We were designed to thrive. There's interference. There's a lot of interference. And where did we go wrong? I mean, where do we start, right, Mariza? First of all, a lot of what we've been taught, we need to unlearn and relearn. And there's an old quote from Alvin Toffler who said that a very long time ago. He said, the illiterate of the 21st century, it's not those who cannot read and write, it's those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So we've been taught that dietary fat is bad for you. Stay away from saturated fat, stay away from cholesterol. We've been taught that, hey, if you want to lose weight, just count your calories, be in a deficit, exercise more, eat less. We've been taught that symptoms are a problem. Go see your doctor to get a medication to mitigate the symptoms. And all of that is not true. Symptoms are not the problem. They're a result of the problem. They're actually a gift from your human body, your innate intelligence. It's your body's way of communicating to you. So if you have a symptom right now, give thanks for it. This is your body's way of showing you a check engine light so you could identify what has caused the symptom, what's causing the inflammation. Where do we start with that? I would say insulin is a big piece. And insulin, as we know, is a hormone. Yeah, it's a really
I'm like,
important hormone.
it's everything to me.
Yeah, it is. Every cell has a receptor site for insulin, right? And insulin has a bad PR person because people think we should hate insulin and we should hate cortisol. And that's not true. These are hormones that are very important for life and energy. But when they're elevated, like when insulin is elevated, it's kind of a bully hormone. It's a energy sensor that signals fat storage and growth. And when you're a baby, okay, that's great. You want fat storage, you want growth, you want to be able to grow. But when you're an adult and you're constantly spiking glucose and insulin, it's going to age you fast. It's going to lead to symptoms, weight gain, weight loss resistance. And what's really interesting, Mariza, about insulin is that the studies, and I put these studies in my book, Metabolic Freedom, the studies are showing that you could have full-blown insulin resistance for, on average, 6 to 14 years without your fasting blood sugars changing or your A1C changing at all. That could look perfect. Meanwhile, your body is so busy producing massive amounts of insulin to clear the excess glucose until it cannot. And then you are diagnosed with PCOS, prediabetes, diabetes, which then opens up a whole new world to metabolic diseases. So high levels of insulin are the first domino to fall that trigger a cascade of metabolic disease. And that's the first thing we want to address.
Hmm. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Just really quickly, and more so, I think a lot of people don't realize, besides it being a growth hormone and a fat storage hormone, it drives a lot of inflammation. And particularly, what I'm most interested in for my audience is cardiovascular inflammation. I find that insulin resistance is the number one risk factor for cardiovascular disease.
Number one. And, I did a poll on this is funny that you said that because I just did a poll on my Instagram. Let me go look at the results. Here's the question. I asked my audience, hey, heart disease is the number one killer in the US, which we both know that. And I asked my audience to vote. I'm going to give you 4 options. Which option do you think is the number one cause of heart disease? So I put high cholesterol, too much stress, high insulin, and seed oils. And 39%, which is the majority vote here, was high insulin, followed by stress, seed oils, and then 9% said high cholesterol. So my audience is pretty smart. You're correct.
Wow.
It is high insulin
I'm
as the number
really
one cause.
impressed with
I'm
your
impressed too.
yeah.
They're listening to us
They're
here. They're
listening.
listening to us. And you're right, because here's what happens. And I'll give the mechanisms of action for your audience. When you have high levels of blood sugar, insulin is produced to clear it, as I just mentioned. And you could clear that for about 6 to 14 years until you can't do it as efficiently. And then all of a sudden your blood sugars rise. But when that happens, it strips nitric oxide from your body, which is a very important gaseous molecule responsible for a lot of things, cell signaling. But one of the main things here, nitric oxide creates vasodilation, the opening of your blood vessels so you could deliver oxygen, nutrients, and blood to tissues to heal. Now, when you restrict nitric oxide from high glucose, high insulin, it creates vasoconstriction, where the arteries are narrowed, and now your heart has to pump harder to deliver the blood flow, the oxygen, and the nutrients, which leads to high blood pressure. It's the number one cause of high blood pressure, which we know leads to heart disease. So yes, you're correct. We need to tackle the insulin piece. Everybody needs to get a fasting insulin blood test done. It's one of the most important tests you get done for your metabolism. And make sure it's in the single digits. Make sure it's between 3 and 6. That is optimal, not above 10, because that shows you have insulin resistance.
Yeah, I don't even love it above 6. And I was just working with a patient who wanted to go through her insurance, and we got all of her, again, A1C was there, fasting glucose, and it was very clear to me that from those labs, she had insulin resistance. And I was like, hey, I'd love see if, since you got good insurance and they've covered all this, see, like, now that we've got some evidence here, go back and say, hey, I want a ApoB. She had high fibrinogen and homocysteine. This woman was in her 30s. And
Wow.
I was like, and we need a fasting insulin. Let's get a deeper picture of what's going on. And she went, they said, one, you have to come in for us to even approve these. And it was not approved. And she was so upset. And she's just like, I don't understand. I'm like, I know, but here's the beautiful thing is, and I'm so sorry, but luckily we live in a time where we can do direct to consumer labs. It's unfortunate that your doctor's like, no, as far as I'm concerned, these are normal enough. And I will not run these second level labs. But I was like, okay, we can just go, we'll have to go out of pocket and do this direct to consumer. But I just want you to know that if that's happening to if you're listening to this and you're like, I can't get a fasting insulin, they do not feel like it is an indicator for diabetes or prediabetes or pathology or cardiovascular disease, then please go and pay the $70 or the $50 to run it yourself.
Yeah, it's not expensive. I think some labs only charge like $30 as well.
Yeah, it depends on the company. Yeah.
And the reason why the conventional doctor does not want to run a fasting insulin is because they don't have a medication to prescribe for fasting insulin. They have it for glucose, but not for medication. So it makes no sense. Why should I run that if I don't have a medication to prescribe for you? So
I have nothing for you.
But to your point, we could actually order it on our own. We don't need our doctor's permission.
Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you broke that down. And it's even, when it comes to my perimenopause and menopause ladies, where we see that decline in estradiol, that has a profound impact on insulin sensitivity, but also on nitric oxide as well in the blood vessels. And so I kind of see this kind of dual action happening with that drop in estradiol, where I see an increase in hyperinsulinemia, but also I see that decline and vascular compromise as a result. So
No, you're correct. They become more insulin resistant as they go through perimenopause and postmenopause, which is why this information is even more important for the ladies out there in perimenopause and postmenopause, because this is exactly how you sensitize insulin and restore your metabolism.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we've broken down kind of that connection between metabolic dysfunction and insulin resistance. And I think we both land. And so I want to break down, I know that we're not doing anything necessarily in the medical community or in the healthcare system around this, but let's say, someone's coming in, they do have insulin resistance in the 7s, 8s, and 10s, and there's definitely an issue in terms of our glucose metabolism, our overall metabolism. What have been what you consider to be the best interventions for helping to reverse insulin resistance?
Yeah, and I've seen it work really well and pretty fast when we apply these tools for both men, women, and women who are menstruating and even perimenopause and postmenopausal. And it's, of course, the food that we eat has a huge response can have a huge response on our insulin levels. So it's carbohydrates that have the biggest blood insulin response by far. And it's not that carbs are bad. I'm not saying that, but processed carbs are bad.
Yes.
And it gives you a huge glucose and insulin response. So when we look at fat and protein, there's not much going on with insulin. Yes, with protein, there is a moderate insulin spike, not much. With fat, really little. It doesn't really move the needle when it comes to glucose and insulin. So that makes sense to eat less carbohydrates and eat more protein and fat. That could be keto. It doesn't have to be, but the goal is to reduce the carbohydrate intake, especially processed carbs, and replace that with high quality protein, healthy fats. In combination, though, of doing that, you also want to eliminate the snacking, the grazing, the eating in between meals, because every time you do that, you raise glucose and insulin, and it's contributing to you being a sugar burner and your insulin resistance progressing. So a good start would be breakfast, lunch, and dinner, no snacks in between. Even if it's a healthy snack, it's going to elicit a glucose and insulin response. And that's disruptive to the metabolism. We're not designed to be grazing all day long. It takes the metabolism out of this workflow. It's like I work from home, you do too. If we were getting into a flow state here in our office, but every 2 to 3 hours, somebody's banging on our door, interrupting us, that's like what snacking does to our metabolism. It keeps disrupting its efficiency. So we don't want to snack and graze. We want to eat plenty of fat and protein with the meals, which helps you feel full and satiated. So you don't need to snack in between meals. And then, of course, as you advance, you could do keto. Keto could be tremendous for insulin resistance, and keto done the right way. And different fasting protocols as well are great for lowering glucose and insulin.
Mm. And I know my ladies would love a little bit more specificity. Are we talking about 4 to 5 hours between meals, Ben, would you say overall?
I would say, look, if you're starting out here and if you're snacking and grazing throughout the day, then start off with 3 meals a day. Let's say 8 a.m., 12 p.m., and let's say 7 p.m., right? So yeah, 4 or 5 hours in between meals. It's enough time for your body to lower insulin. And then as you get more progressive here in your protocol, you could condense the entire eating window from, in this case, it's like 12 hours or so, 13 hours to 8 hours, where you have your 2 or 3 meals within an 8-hour window, which would be like 12 to 8 p.m. or 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., however you want to do it. So having a window where you're allowing your body to be in this fasting state where it lowers insulin and using your sleep as part of that window really works well.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of circadian-based fasting and I like women to, because it's mostly my ladies over here, to eat at 5 or 6 and then shut it down. I call
Smart.
anything past dinner, past 6 or 7, late night eating. Let's just call it what it is, because it's
True.
ultimately we're more relatively insulin resistant in the evening for good reason due to our circadian rhythm. And I'll tell you, it's not going anywhere good when we're eating late, we're eating late at night. And then not to break that fast until the morning, whenever it feels appropriate for you, right? I don't want you starving, if you're heading into a big workout, like do whatever you need to do, but at least having that 12 to 14-hour window where you stop in the evening after dinner and not till the next day. And I find that even if women are feeling overly stressed or overly whatever may be going on, that is still a window that can feel good without them overstressing their system.
It's a great protocol. I love it. And you're right. You do not want to eat too close to bedtime. Personally, it destroys my heart rate variability, my deep sleep, my REM sleep, my resting heart rate. I rarely eat too close to bedtime. There are some exceptions with, dinners that you get invited to, but that's a good rule of thumb. Close the kitchen, 6
Close the
p.m.
kitchen.
It's
Yes,
closed. It's done.
absolutely.
And let's face it, nobody's eating broccoli and chicken breast at
gonna
11
say.
p.m., right? It's like they're having something unhealthy.
It's not a veggie
typically.
medley, okay?
No, it's not. It's Oreos or something like that.
Or it's granola. Like I'm just going to throw my husband under the bus real quick. He has a continuous glucose monitor right now. And I'm like, can you just watch what happens in the evening? But my husband buys purely Elizabeth granola, which
Yeah,
I
so it's
don't
a healthier version of it. Yeah.
call, it's still got sugar in it. Like, look at the ingredients.
Yeah, I didn't say healthy. I said healthier. I said
Okay,
healthier.
I personally, with the genetic propensity towards prediabetes on the Mexican side of my family, looking at that will drive my blood sugar up. And
Wow.
so it's not something I consume ever. It's just I don't have the wiggle room. Although I do have a lot more metabolic flexibility than I've ever had before, it's just not something that's going to feed my future brain.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
So that's just not the choice I would make. But anyway, and he's eating that late at night. I'm like, I want to know, like, real talk, numbers don't lie. What is the CGM saying? I want to know. And so tonight, I'm going to get an opportunity to see it.
I love it. That's the data. He can't lie. He can't, you got to look at the numbers, and the numbers do not
Exactly.
lie.
And I
One of
actually
the,
want to talk to you about bioobservability in terms of, you talked about HRV and resting
yeah,
heart rate and even sleep scores. But also, are you a proponent of recommending a continuous glucose monitor so people can see? Because the numbers, man, they really don't lie. And so I
I
was,
love,
yeah.
yeah, no, I love the idea of wearing that. I talk about it in the book, a continuous glucose monitor. Now, it's not necessary to make progress, but it is a valuable tool. Absolutely. Like with your husband tonight, right? You're going to see his blood sugar spike from his purely Elizabeth granola, and he can make a decision. Do I want to continue to spike my glucose because I see it, or sometimes ignorance is bliss and he doesn't see it, right? So, one of the benefits of a CG, well, there's many benefits. The first main benefit is gives you 24/7 snapshot at your blood sugar levels, which is unique to you. And I could have a certain set of foods that might give me a beautiful blood sugar spike that's natural, that goes back down, and somebody else could have the same meal and it could spike really high and stay high. And it shows you what individual foods do to blood glucose. It shows you what stress does to your blood sugar levels. It shows you what poor sleep does to your blood sugar levels, what exercise and sauna and cold plunge could do to your blood sugar levels. And then the accountability part. When you have somebody who's looking at your numbers like you're going to do for your husband, whether it's your, partner or like a coach,
Or even the
sometimes these
CGM, Ben. I feel like the CGM alone is like,
showing you
what you,
like
what you gonna do?
danger go. Yeah, no, you're correct. But when you actually have a coach
Yes.
looking at it, and some of these companies like NutriSense have, a dietitian looking at your numbers, and somebody's looking at your numbers, then you're in a situation where, let's say you're at a dinner and you got your CGM on and they ask if you want dessert, you're going to second think that, because if you have that dessert, when your coach looks at your numbers and sees that spike from the dessert, they're going to ask you, what did you do Friday at 8:30 p.m.? Did you eat something you weren't supposed to eat? Like, it's gonna,
Did you
so
have
you
that
might,
margarita?
yeah, that margarita, exactly. So it might influence you to make a better decision. So I love it. I think it's great. Now, another option would be, a finger prick machine, which is not as good because you have to continuously prick your finger to get a reading, but it's also still valuable.
Yeah. I just wanted to just speak into that. I was curious what you felt. And I think initially, even for 2 weeks, that data can be so game changing. It's
Yes.
so eye opening about, like, because I think there's a lot of misinformation. I know that there's a lot of, you address this inside of the book, the misinformation from the pharmaceutical companies, the misinformation from the big food industry about a lot of us. I remember having a woman one of my metabolic patients who was wearing a CGM, and it just spiked. It went from 90 to 140. And to me, a 50-point spike is a pretty darn big spike. And
Yes.
she was like, well, it was a cauliflower pizza. But what she
Mm,
didn't realize is most of that cauliflower pizza was actually rice flour.
mm,
And so there's a lot of these, but it's, there's kind of these myths or misinformation about what is actually in our food that we think it's okay. Well, oh, but it's a yogurt. It's got protein in my yogurt. Like, and obviously some yogurts are not going to spike your blood sugar, but there's a lot of things that the way that they tout it, the way that they market it, it seems a lot healthier than it actually is.
100%. You're correct, right? The labels for these foods are amazing. Like the marketing and the branding, 100% organic, gluten free, paleo friendly, keto approved, whatever it is. It doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy. It really doesn't. Look at the ingredients. If there's ingredients you cannot pronounce, red flag. And if you just compare like the purely Elizabeth or any packaged food to whole foods, when we look at an avocado or grass or ground beef or an egg or banana, there's no ingredients list because you get what you're looking at. But like potatoes, for example, if you buy a potato, where's the ingredient list? Well, there's no, you're getting what you see. Potato chips, 20 ingredients, artificial ingredients, seed oils, and it's processed, completely different response. And the CGM will show you exactly what that food is doing to you. I remember when I first started wearing the CGM back in like 2019, I would have coconut whipped cream with blueberries, thinking it was pretty healthy, and it sounds pretty healthy. It was no added sugar, just the natural sugar in the coconut. And it was jacking up my blood sugar. I had no idea. I've been consuming that for months. And ever since I saw that, I stopped eating coconut whipped cream with the blueberries. Now, the blueberries alone are fine, but it was the coconut whipped cream that was jacking it up for me.
Yeah, and I think it's in again, I would have assumed because we've made, natural whipped coconut with my son before with strawberries, and he's 4, and so he can have that like a little treat every now and again,
Yes.
that kind of a thing, but it's not an everyday occurrence. But honestly, I've never worn a CGM looking at something like that, and even I kind of would safely assume that that would be okay. So yeah, I think that that kind of information, and again, each and every one of us is going to be different, but especially what I've learned in working with so many women over the years of that this misinformation is just so pervasive that we often will think that something's okay when unfortunately for our biology, well, for many of us, it just isn't.
Yeah, the misinformation campaign is
Mm.
strong.
It is.
Big pharma, big gov, big food. Oh my gosh. It's usually the opposite of what they're telling us to do is the right track.
Mhm. We were talking about misinformation and you mentioned seed oils, and I was really inspired by how you talked about that in Dallas because it's so interesting. I have a no seed oil, rule in my programs and in my book when it comes to eating metabolically healthy foods. I think it drives significant, insane oxidative stress and inflammation. But there's so much, and you go and look up seed oils, you go and look up seed oil research, and there's so much against that seed oils are bad for us. I was mind blown at how much pushback there is about seed oils being bad. And I'd love to hear how you feel about that.
Well, the cool thing about the seed oil conversation, it's becoming more mainstream, right, Maritza? It's cool to
It's
see that.
yeah.
We've been preaching the message for years, but then there's a lot of confusion around it because there are some studies showing that seed oils are not inflammatory. They could be healthy for you. And that's actually true. They can be healthy. Those are unprocessed seed oils, unadulterated seed oils, which I'm all for. Organic cold pressed sunflower oil, organic cold pressed grapeseed oil, not heated. Absolutely healthy for you. But the majority of the seed oils in our food supply are not that. It's the processed seed oils, which is highly inflammatory, creating massive amounts of oxidative stress. Like you mentioned, when you consume them, it's creating so much stress at a cell level, so much inflammation. It's like biting into an apple and coming back, looking at the apple, the part that you bit, and it turns brown. That's the rusting, the oxidation. That's happening at a cell level. They're very unstable fats. They're called polyunsaturated fatty acids. The word poly means many. So these fats contain many double bonds. The more double bonds a fat contains, the more reactive it is to oxygen, pressure, and heat. Okay, how do they process these fats? Oxygen, pressure, and heat. The exact three things that it destroys the fat. Then they put chemical agents in it because to mask the rancidity of the smell, they put it in a bottle, canola oil. American Heart Association says it's heart healthy. It's the exact opposite. And they stay in your body, in your cell membranes, mitochondrial membranes for years. The studies are showing that if you stopped eating these bad fats today, approximately 680 days later, that's about 2 years, half of them will still remain in your body fat, creating inflammation. That's why I think they're more dangerous than smoking cigarettes and processed sugar because they stick around for a very long time. And in the Metabolic Freedom, I have a study that I put on the chapter on processed foods, which talks about seed oils, where I talk about Dr. Martin Grutfeld's study, where he looked at French fries that were fried in vegetable oils, which are these seed oils we're talking about. And he looked at the aldehyde contents produced after frying these oils. Aldehydes are carcinogenic. It's how tobacco cigarettes increase cancer risk. So he showed that one French fry fried in vegetable oil, when you eat that, it's equivalent to a tobacco cigarette smoked, which is insane. So if you've never smoked a tobacco cigarette in your life, great job. But if you've had 10,000 French fries in your lifespan, you've pretty much smoked 10,000 tobacco cigarettes. So we want to avoid canola, corn, cottonseed oil, sunflower, soybean, and safflower oil, rice bran oil, and grapeseed oil. They're inflammatory. They're polyunsaturated fats. Instead, we want to swap those with saturated fats. Saturated fats have zero double bonds. They're very stable, even at high heat and pressure. So you want to consume butter, ghee, coconut oil, duck fat, beef tallow. Those are amazing saturated fats, amazing fats to cook your foods in. And then we have monounsaturated fats that have one double bond, way more stable than polyunsaturated fats like avocado oil and olive oil, which are great for salad dressings and dips. That swap right there, you do that little swap, you're going to lower inflammation, balance hormones, and restore your metabolism.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I even think about the seed oils in a lot of these packaged foods. Like, and there's obviously companies that are putting avocado oil instead, but it's still, to me, it's still a packaged food. It's still a refined grain. I still kind of land kind of around the argument where, the whole dye, red dye or yellow dye or any of the dyes that are in foods. And I feel like we're all missing the bigger picture. Like, oh, yeah, let's remove the red dye 40 or the red dye 3. But I'm like, but can we just acknowledge the fact that anything that's got dye in it is an ultra processed food? Like all of it. None of it's okay. Like, so that's where I land in the conversation. I'm like, I don't care what, like, yes, there are better oils to put in some of these foods. And yes, like you were talking about, a healthier option. But still, as I look at a lot of these things, it's still to me a processed food or an ultra processed food. And I know that, I don't know, however that sounds, I bet people are like, oh my gosh, Mariza, I roll. But I just, again, we talked about the avocado, the apple, the banana, like the ground beef, the egg, like those are the foods that to me to be the focus.
I agree 100%. I mean, we want whole foods as much as possible. Now, with that being said, if you're somebody who's eating regular chips that have the bad oils, a good step is to swap it out for, like lesser evil, right? It's a progression. But yeah, ideally, you don't want processed foods at all because
Yeah.
you're correct. And you make a good point because we're hearing more about beef tallow being used for French fries, like Steak and Shake in different
Right,
restaurants,
or avocado oil. My down the
or
street are
avocado.
like, we're doing it in
Yeah.
avocado oil. I
Yeah.
mean, you're still freaking frying the fry. Like,
You're still frying it and it's still high fat and high carbs, which is not healthy. So it's way better than a seed oil, but it's still not healthy. Let's be clear to your point.
yeah, I just had to, off my soapbox. That's just where I land, especially when I'm feeding my son. Most important, my husband, do you, boo? Like, do you? But particularly with my son, where we're seeing so many children's metabolic, systems are being busted well before 18. All of these things are in consideration. We take them to a birthday party and they got the ice cream truck, and every ice cream there is filled with dye, and every child's neck and mouth is covered in dye. And I'm like, no, this is not even okay every now and again. This isn't it. This isn't okay. And so I don't know. This is the hill I'm willing to die on.
I love it. No, you're committed. Your kids are blessed to have you and your husband.
Yeah.
It's important. I agree with you. It's important.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring kind of the elephant in the room that although, yes, I'm a big fan of upgrading snacks and upgrading your treats, like at the very least, do an upgrade. But then, like, let's really deeply consider, is even the upgrade feeding your future brain the type of substrates that you feel is going to thrive in your brain?
Well said. I'm with you.
I wanted to talk. So, one of the things I tell my ladies, and I'm curious where you land on this, is that when they're thinking about a snack, I'm like, exercise snack. Like meaning
Ah,
movement instead of a real
yeah.
snack. And that's one of the biggest, to me, one of the biggest ways that I can improve someone's, besides obviously food being the number one pillar here, but movement being a really powerful way to optimize blood glucose and insulin sensitivity. And I was curious, do you get into that into the book as well, the power of movement? I believe that we should build a life around movement.
Yeah. 100%. Exactly. I do talk about that in the book. I talk about the value of postprandial walks, so walking after a meal, simple as 10 minutes after a meal has a great ability to blunt that glucose response we were talking about earlier. Now, if you could go to 30 minutes, that's great. Not everybody has the time to do that, but at least walking after your biggest meal of the day would be a good start. And just walking in general, yes, because you're recruiting all these lower muscle fibers, which help with hormones and fat loss. And there's a study I put in the book that looked at over 60,000 people in the study. And what it did is looking at walking as it relates to life extension. And it showed that individuals who walked at least 5 to 7,000 steps per day had about a 60 to 70% reduction of dying from all cause mortality versus those who walked less than 3,000 steps a day. That is huge. That's massive. And if you think about it, Maritza, 5 to 7,000 steps a day, it's not really a lot, especially when you do these exercise snacks that you mentioned. So walking after a meal, walking in the morning, walking on a treadmill as you work. I mean, there's different ways to do this, but building muscle is the key here. For you ladies out there and also men, muscle is where it's at. And I'm not saying to be a bodybuilder or a CrossFitter. I'm saying the more lean muscle mass you have, the more insulin sensitive you are, first and foremost. So you prevent osteopenia, osteoporosis, hip fractures. And what's really, really fascinating with the metabolism part here, I've heard so many people, and I'm sure you have as well, say, oh my gosh, ever since I hit 40 years old, my metabolism has slowed down. Or, oh my gosh, ever since I hit perimenopause and then menopause, my metabolism has slowed down. My metabolism is so slow. Well, when I did the research on the metabolism for this book, I discovered that the metabolism doesn't necessarily even operate in speeds. It's either efficient or inefficient. And I looked at so many studies on metabolism, and I came across this really, really good study from Duke, and it was published in 2021. It was the most comprehensive study I've ever seen on the metabolism. There were over 8,000 people in the study, and they took all walks of life, meaning the earliest age in the study was a 1-year-old, and the oldest person in the study was a 94-year-old, and they measured their metabolism through a really sophisticated process. And here's what the study showed. There are no significant changes in the metabolism between ages 20 and 60. The study said once we reach age 60 for both men and women, there's about a 0.7% decline in the metabolism every year after that point. Okay, that might sound like bad news if you're listening to this and you're over 60, but here's what the study said. The reason why that metabolism declines after age 60 is loss of muscle mass.
Yep.
So if you build lean muscle mass during your perimenopause years, or even during your postmenopausal years, you could have a metabolism at age 75 working the same way as when you were 25 years old by building lean muscle mass, eating high quality protein, doing all the things we're talking about here. And that's super exciting to me. And walking fits right into that activity of walking. I mean, I love my walks every day. I have my dog. I walk him every morning. I walk him every evening. I do affirmations in my head. It's such a great time to get out in nature. So I'm hitting my 10 to 12,000 steps a day. The goal is to get those steps in, especially after you eat, and it has tremendous benefits.
Agreed. And I've looked at that study as well. And I've looked at a couple of other studies on metabolism and how it doesn't change. And I always have a struggle. I struggle with it in the sense that, yes, some of the cellular mechanisms of metabolism aren't changing, but then so many of these people have really significant insulin resistance and prediabetes. And so I'm like, or they're losing a lot of muscle mass. And so we're seeing that shift and change. And so I'm still such a big proponent. If you start to see those changes happen, whether it's belly fat or the blood glucose numbers are going up or fasting insulin is going up, like it's time to make a pivot. It's time to be very intentional about your metabolic health, your muscle health, and in getting those numbers back in optimal range. And so, yeah, I'm curious how you feel about that, because here we are, we've got 93% of us are struggling with some level of insulin issues. And yet we also, when we're looking deep into the mechanisms of metabolism, it doesn't really shift until our 60s. Yet we have so many people with prediabetes.
Yeah, no, that's the point. I agree with you, right? I didn't make this point clear, but so many people are trying to boost their metabolism, and that's not what we want to do. We want to have an efficient metabolism, not an inefficient metabolism, but an efficient metabolism. So yes, all the things we're talking about here, lowering insulin, building lean muscle mass, having metabolic flexibility, because when you have a metabolism that's not functioning metabolically flexible or metabolically free, you're going to have all these symptoms. And just because your metabolism is not slowing down or changing speeds until you reach age 60 doesn't mean you shouldn't do something about it right now, to your point. Yeah, no,
that's
100%.
the argument I'll hear from people. Oh, well, it doesn't change until our 60s.
Yeah.
I'm like, this woman's pre-diabetic. Are you trying to tell me that her metabolism didn't change? Like, it's not efficient. Okay, so thank you so much for clarifying that.
Yeah.
I'm always like, the math ain't mathin' on that. Yeah. The last question I have, and this is where a lot of my ladies are struggling, because again, one of my best friends is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, and we talk a lot about muscle protein synthesis, loss of muscle mass, and the amount of protein that one should consume. And I find that my women are like, eating protein is a part-time job to get my 110 or 120 grams of protein. And if I'm intermittent fasting, like I have a small window, it feels almost impossible with the schedule that I maintain. And so have you found, particularly obviously my demographic of women, where they can have a slightly bigger window so they can shove all the as a mom, as a woman who's working and who trains, to preserve and build muscle, I'm not going to pretend like it doesn't feel like a part-time job too.
No, I get that a lot from not just my female students, but my male students as well. Yes, it could feel like a part-time job. It could be really difficult, especially when you're fasting. How do you get all the protein in your fasting window? Well, you have an option. You could extend your eating window and decrease your fasting window. That's one option. Essential amino acids are a great thing to consume to kind of fill in the gaps for sure. If you feel like you're just not hitting the protein requirements, then definitely take essential amino acids. I personally take about 20 grams a day of essential amino acids, but 10 grams a day is a good starting point. And then you could also get in like a easy to digest protein, like protein shakes. Although I don't want to rely on that. Through the conversation earlier, it's
I do
insulinogenic.
protein coffee. I'm not going
It's
to lie.
yeah, so I'll put exactly. So I'll put about 30 to 40 grams of protein in my coffee. Same thing. I'll put collagen in my coffee and then I'll take some creatine and essential amino acids. But if you're struggling to hit the protein requirement, a lot of people think that if I have too much protein in a meal, I won't assimilate and digest that. And that has just been debunked
Yes, totally.
study after study, right? You could consume 100 grams of protein. And if you have the enzymes in place to break it down, you will absorb all of that. So it's always a good idea if you're going to have a big protein rich meal, take some digestive enzymes probably right before it to help you break it down to assimilate it. Don't be afraid that you're going to convert it into sugar and knock you out of ketosis or whatever it is. Your body will use what it needs to use and you'll get rid of the rest. So if you're struggling to do that, if you're struggling to hit the protein requirements, then you might want to extend the eating window and decrease the fasting window. A good rule of thumb just to cover your bases is to take essential amino acids. And when all else fails, put protein in your coffee like what we do here.
I mean, I'm just going to be honest with my ladies, with my audience. That's one of the first things I usually break my fast with protein coffee, especially if
Same,
I know that I'm going into a heavy lift workout. I
same.
just want to make sure that I find that I fall apart in a fasted state. So just something to get me into that workout to get it done. So I may break my fast earlier on those days, knowing that I'm about to go like do a heavy leg day just to make sure that I've got enough in the tank to get me through that workout. So it
Smart.
shifts, depends on the day.
Yeah, no, it's smart. On the days you're strength training, definitely want to make sure you're doing less fasting, more feasting, more protein. On the days you're not active, then you could do a little bit more fasting, and it's even okay to not hit your protein requirement on that day. It's fine. But I think so. You might
Yeah, yeah,
disagree, but
yeah. No, I
yeah,
because
but
I
on
think
most,
it's most of us, even the experts out there who are talking about it, are not hitting those numbers every day.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm just being
A
honest.
lot of experts who talk about things don't do what they preach as well. So I respect those who do most of what they preach. They live it to lead it. I love that in people. But yeah, some don't really live it to lead it in our space, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then I wanted to so, I know we're talking about a lot of things that I think feel very manageable, very doable, like, very actionable, like, today. And I'm so grateful for that. So, really what I wanted from this conversation. But I think the biggest piece that I find for my patients and my audience is gonna be the mindset piece, and this is where I think you really shine. Besides, I mean, the research and the numbers and the actionables, Ben, you're such a bright light, such a light being when it comes to shifting mindset. Even you really live it as well. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Because so many of my women, I even myself, I even struggled for a long time believing that I deserve to be well,
Mm.
believing that I deserve to give myself that level of attention. I used to think it was so selfish to focus on me. And, I was having this conversation with my husband last night about how many women, my mom's generation or a little bit older, how there's all of them are suffering from chronic conditions in their 60s. And a big part of that was that they just always took care of everyone else before they ever took care of themselves. And now here they are really struggling in their 60s.
My mom's exactly like that. She's too unselfish to her fault. She's not taking care of herself. And I see that a lot. Yeah, your mindset, your thoughts, the way you view yourself, your self-image, so very, it's the most important thing. We could talk about seed oils and fasting and circadian rhythm and all that's great. Don't get me wrong, but like if you don't have this dialed in, none of that's going to work to the extent that you want it to work. That's why chapter 10 in Metabolic Freedom talks all about this, how your thoughts influence your metabolism. I might write an entire book on the principles of chapter 10, and I've been thinking of calling it mental freedom. That might
Oh,
be
I
something I
love
write
that.
in the future.
Yeah.
But the book goes into, the placebo effect, the nocebo effect, but how your thoughts literally influence your metabolism. And this is not woo woo or hypothetical. Your thoughts. I mean, Dr. Bruce Lipton has shown this in his book, Biology of Belief, and many others like Dr. Joe Dispenza. Every single thought you have is a frequency. And that thought sends a signal to your cells, and it penetrates your cell membranes, goes right into your DNA nucleus, and it tells your DNA nucleus to perform a certain job, to produce certain proteins. If it's a angry thought, hateful thought, resentful thought, bitter thought, the signal sent to your DNA nucleus produces inflammatory proteins, which shortens your telomeres and damages your DNA and essentially shortens your lifespan with a single thought. But if it's a loving thought, a grateful thought, an abundant thought, a happy thought, same signal sent to the DNA nucleus, but now it's an anti-inflammatory protein where your telomeres are protected and your DNA is preserved and your lifespan is increased. So we have 60,000 thoughts a day on average, according to psychiatrists. 60,000. I might have a little more. I think you do too, Mariza. And the studies show that out of those 60,000 thoughts, about 90% of them are the same thoughts from yesterday, and about 85% of those thoughts are negative thoughts, what Zig Ziglar used to call stinking thinking. And I always say, if your thinking is stinking, your dreams and health is shrinking. So if you have 60,000 thoughts and those thoughts influence your metabolism and your DNA, that means you have 60,000 opportunities to put your body in an anti-inflammatory state every single day. That is the greatest biohack that I could ever teach you. And once you start becoming aware of those thoughts and choosing better thoughts and taking your vitamin G, which I'd love to talk a little bit about, everything in your life changes. Everything. And your environment controls the thoughts. And I'll just add one more thing here. Vitamin G is the missing piece. You know, vitamin G, if you're not taking this supplement, ladies, you're missing out. Vitamin G is anti-inflammatory, it's fat burning, it gets rid of brain fog, it helps with autoimmune, it helps with PCOS, helps with all the hot flashes and all the things you might be dealing with right now. UC Davis has a study that I put in the book that shows individuals who take vitamin G have healthier blood pressure levels, healthier A1C levels. JAMA has a study that Harvard did that published in JAMA that was from last year. I put in the book over 49,000 nurses in this study. And the study showed that the nurses who took vitamin G on a consistent basis had a 9% reduction of dying from all-cause mortality compared to the nurses who didn't take any vitamin G, and a 15% reduction in dying from cardiovascular disease. Okay, your audience is already looking in the show notes for an affiliate link and a coupon code for vitamin G. They might already be on Amazon. Vitamin G does not sponsor this podcast because vitamin G is the feeling of gratitude. That's what vitamin G is. I didn't say practice. I've changed my mind on this. I used to say practice. It's not the practice of gratitude. It's the feeling of gratitude. I say in the book, gratitude is strength training for your soul. All of those studies I shared, Mariza, you know to be true. They're all on gratitude. When you are grateful, you produce oxytocin, which if you're perimenopausal, postmenopausal, oxytocin is where it's at. It buffers cortisol, and you want healthy levels of oxytocin, the feel-good hormone. Well, you get it right away when you experience gratitude. It's free. There's no toxicity limit, and it helps to program your thoughts to be more loving, abundant thoughts, which then goes back to the piece where it changes your DNA nucleus. So vitamin G is where it's at. Get your daily dose every day.
I love that. I don't know if you ever read Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown, but she talks about looking at joy. And I think joy is the most epic emotion because it's spontaneous. It's not happiness. We're talking about yummy, bubbly joy. And the research was clear that it's an uphill spiral, like joy will spiral up from gratitude. That is the way that we create joy. Spontaneous joy is having more gratitude. And that to me, I was like, who doesn't want that? Like, and so we do have a lot of gratitude practices in our home with my son about having appreciation. And I just want to let you know, Ben, how deeply appreciative that I am for you to come on today. I feel very grateful.
I am also very grateful of you and your amazing work and allowing me to share with your audience today. I appreciate you as well, Mariza.
Well, today is the day that the book is out. Can you tell us where we can get it and all the goodies that come with it?
Yes, today is the book day, the book launch day. We did it.
Yes.
So the book is with Hay House, and Mariza has a Hay House book coming out soon. Woo, let's go. It's called Metabolic Freedom, and it's split into two different parts. The first half of the book is all about the causes to metabolic disease. We need to identify the causes before we could remove it. The second part are the solutions, and then it's all tied together with a 30-day plan to achieve metabolic freedom And whether you're a beginner or somebody who's been doing this for years, there's 2 different plans for you to follow at the end of the book. It gives you exactly what to do for 30 days. Vitamin G is a part of that, by the way, what to eat, etc. And then there's a whole bunch of fat burning recipes at the end of the book. Dr. Mindy Pelz wrote the foreword, and it's been endorsed by a lot of great people that have been on your show, a lot of your colleagues. And the book is available on hardcover, Kindle, and on Audible. I narrated the Audible myself, and we're giving away, it was a pain in the butt.
Oh my gosh,
Narrated.
I am not excited. I mean, I'm
Yes.
so grateful for the opportunity to spend
Yes.
5 days in a booth.
It's a cool opportunity and a great experience and very challenging. At least it was for me.
Yeah.
But I like when authors narrate it. So I love that you're doing that. So we have a special gift. I have an entire course on the metabolism that I built out, 12 lessons on the metabolism that we're giving away for free with every order of the book. And in that course, there are exclusive interviews with Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, Dr. Daniel Pompa, and Gary Brecka. And that's only in the course with the interview, with the lessons that I have in the course. So all you need to do is go to metabolicfreedombook.com. You'll see several links to buy the book on whatever retailer you prefer. Then when you purchase the book, you'll go back to that page and just put your name, email, and order number, and you'll be instantly sent login access for the course and the interview. So it is metabolicfreedombook.com.
Love it. Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. Congratulations on this incredible book and the work that you're doing in the world. It's been such a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, Mariza. Thank you, and congrats to your great work as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. And if you are ready to learn more about perimenopause and how to navigate with a lot of ease and grace, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you can join our community. Don't forget to share this video with someone that you love, that you know is navigating the perimenopause journey as well, because they deserve to feel their best too. See you in the next video.